Has your home become a battleground when it comes to rules? Are you tired of consequences not producing the desired change? Continue watching to learn how to create more effective consequences for your home. A common struggle for parents in raising their children is figuring out how to create effective consequences. And there's a lot of reasons why this can be hard, like not wanting to be disliked by your child, a lack of creativity, past consequences not really working, and maybe just being too tired to deal with the problem in the first place. This video is designed to help you have clarity with your boundaries, to know how to follow through with them when they've been crossed, and to utilize consequences that help your child to develop the principles and the values that you are trying to teach them.
The first step in creating effective consequences is developing a healthy relationship. Think of implementing a consequence as making a withdrawal from your bank. Without making consistent deposits, you will eventually run out of money to make any withdrawals. Your children are the same. If you are always giving consequences without building up positives, the relationship will eventually become bankrupt, and your child won't care about boundaries or consequences. So remember to make deposits. Have fun with them, compliment them often, and learn what their relationship currency is. The next step is to have clear boundaries and expectations. What does that mean? To answer that, the first question I will ask is if you are clear on why this is a boundary. Follow this checklist. What is the principle or value behind this boundary? Make sure this is clear enough to not be manipulated. What would happen in your family or your child's life if this wasn't a boundary? Is this a hill you are willing to die on? Has the boundary been stated or written explicitly? Is this boundary just another item on an unending list of don'ts? Have I established a healthy relationship with my child? It is important to note that there is a difference between boundaries and expectations. Boundaries are the rules of your home that are non-negotiable. Imagine your child asking you if it'd be okay if they smoked crack just this weekend because a bunch of friends are getting together. Are you going to stop and think about it? No, that's an easy answer. Never will that be okay. However, if your child asks for their curfew to be extended by an hour to go to a late movie with some friends, you might consider it. No drugs is an example of a boundary. Curfew is an example of an expectation. With each of these, it is critical to know what principle or value is behind them. No drugs? The principle might be healthy living. It could also be abiding by the law or integrity. The key is knowing your why very clearly. This is important because it greatly influences how to create an effective, principle-based consequence.
Before we get into creating consequences, it's important to understand that if there are no consequences for breaking the boundaries and expectations, or if you're simply inconsistent in doing so, it turns your boundaries and expectations into mere suggestions. It sends a message that it's actually not that important to you. Bring this up now, because when you create consequences, they have to be things that you're willing and able to enforce. If you aren't willing to follow through, then you won't. And if you don't, then you send the message that the negative behavior is actually okay.
Once you have identified the principle or value behind your boundary or expectation, you can start thinking about how the consequence you are creating will teach your child to live it. If your child stole something from you or someone else, what was the principle or value? Maybe it was honesty and integrity. The consequence should then be designed to help them develop honesty and integrity. If your child got back late from being out with friends, what was the principle or value? Maybe it was time management. The consequence should be designed to help them develop better time management. It is easy as a parent to get upset, criticize the misbehavior, and sling some sort of punishment at your child to teach them a lesson. However, if the consequence is just punitive, like, "You're grounded for a week," then no lesson is being taught. It is just a prison sentence that they have to wait out until they have served their term. This approach while it may instill fear of breaking rules, is more effective at building resentment. So ask yourself, would you rather be a teacher or a warden? You get to define your relationship with your child by what role you take in creating consequences. A teacher teaches the child to develop and become responsible. A warden is on the watch for more misbehavior, ready to dole out more punishment when lines are crossed. Effective consequences require you to take on the teacher role. Another aspect of this dynamic is whether or not the consequence is objective-based or time-based. A teacher will use an objective-based consequence, meaning the consequence is over when the objective has been completed. A warden will use a time-based consequence. Here's the difference between the two. An expectation you gave your child when they got a phone was that they had to maintain A and B grades. The principles are healthy priorities and time management. Your child's grades drop into the C's and D's. The warden says, "All right, give me your phone. You can't have it for a week." The teacher says, "All right, give me your phone. You can have it back as soon as you get your grades back up to A's and B's." In the warden scenario, the child has no power to influence the length of the consequence. He just has to wait. While he waits, he's just going to think about how unfair this is and resent you for the consequence. In the teacher scenario, the child is in full control of the length of the consequence. It could be a couple of days long or a couple of months. When you follow this interaction with support and skills to learn how to get their grades up by prioritizing and managing their time better, then you are helping your child to develop more independence and self-confidence. Another key component to effective consequences is having the consequences set ahead of time. This allows you to take the emotion out of the situation. You can keep the interaction businesslike. There are no blow-ups or arguments because the terms were already set. Keeping these interactions emotion-free allows you to be more effective as a parent. The last question to ask yourself as you create a principle-based consequence is it enforceable? There are some consequences that are enforceable for a 5-year-old that are not quite as enforceable when they are 15. For example, the consequence of "go to timeout" is something that you can enforce with a 5-year-old. If they refuse, you can pick them up and move them there. However, to do so with a 15-year-old will result in more of a physical conflict as they are now much bigger. In the same thread, taking a phone away might not always be enforceable without physical escalation. However, you can stop paying for the phone service and render it useless. Learn to figure out what is in your control. The best way to make a consequence enforceable is by identifying what privileges you are providing for your child that you have the power to remove. Some of these include paying for wants, extras, or services, driving them to and from places, preparing nice meals for them, giving them your time, which isn't the removal of love. When you are clear on these, then you have the needed leverage to make consequences more effective. Remember, effective consequences consist of the following: clear, principle-based boundaries that are well communicated, non-punitive consequences that remove a privilege until the expected behavior can be demonstrated, non-emotional, consistent enforcement of the stated consequence. Some examples of this are: the boundary is no destruction of property. The principle is respect. The consequence is we will not pay for any non-essential items until the damaged property has been repaired or replaced. Or the expectation is do your assigned chore each day. The principle is teamwork. And the consequence is allowance will not be given until chores are completed the following week, or an additional chore is done, as assigned by parents, to make up for the missed chore.
Getting good at this will take practice. Write down your boundaries, expectations, and consequences, and have conversations with your child about them when things are going well. And don't expect things to work out perfectly or even immediately. Just stay with it and be consistent. It will get better. Comment below with any questions that you might have. I will respond to questions, or write down your success stories. We can all help each other. Thank you.